I read this. 4 funds run by Somerset Capital Management, an emerging market specialist co-founded by Jacob Rees-Mogg, at the time, of course, of writing, leader of the House of Commons just before the last reshuffle, also have Russian stocks. Nothing illegal about it, but it stinks, right? One of those funds had about £60 million in Sberbank, which is, as of today, the bank in receipt of the most stringent sanctions that I think an American government has ever imposed upon any, I guess, non-Middle Eastern institution. And the man that was the leader of the House of Commons was drawing a profit from it right up until the end of last year. That's how mad it is. Again, nothing illegal, but when you're talking about sanctions and you're trying to get the eggs out of a baked cake, you have to be aware of just how high up the Tory establishment, or again, if you don't like that, you don't like the fact that all the people with their fingers in these particular tills turn out to be Tories, let's just say the British establishment or the English establishment, but so high up, so far up. Then you come to Brandon Lewis, who, of course, is the cabinet minister who spoke of the current government's willingness to break international law in a very limited and specific way. When he was asked why he was taking money from the wife of a former minister in Vladimir Putin's government, his response was that the Russians give us money because they admire us. That was Brandon Lewis when he was asked why he took £25,000 from a wealthy businessman with not just links to Russia, but you could argue a direct line perhaps to the Kremlin. And the short answer is because they are British citizens. And as we've established this week, they're British citizens because up until last week, I'll say that again, last week, it was so easy for these people to buy a British passport. I'd remind you again that Priti Patel is happy to strip citizenship from a teenage girl who was groomed by ISIS, but even with yesterday's announcements regarding sanctions, she will not dream of stripping citizenship from people who have in the past given tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds to the Conservative Party and Conservative Party politicians, because, to quote Minister Brandon Lewis, Russian donors give money to the Tories because they admire us. So what chance is there, really, against that backdrop of these sanctions being meaningful? Well, there is actually some chance of these sanctions being meaningful, partly because Boris Johnson's hand has been forced, partly because the emergency is so dire and so clear, and partly because even he would struggle to lag behind the rest of the world at a time when absolute international unity and union is needed. In fact, Germany and Italy today are probably more responsible for a reluctance to remove Russia from SWIFT, the sort of international financial trading platform, than any other countries in the world. The fact that America have already undertaken a sort of de facto lifting of those rights upon Russia is something that we'll explore at about 10:45 this morning. We'll get an expert to talk us through exactly what that means. I guess my main point then at this moment is that these things are really complicated, and we have all, and I'm as guilty as anybody over the last few years, suffered from a simplification of politics. We've all fallen, I think, to varying degrees for the idea that you can get a handle on everything and have a strong opinion. How many times have we just explored this, picked this scab, if you'd pardon my language, the notion that we call it footballification, don't we? You've got to pick a side, you've got to fight. I mean, this isn't one of those occasions. There is only one side to pick on this occasion, and it's whatever side Vladimir Putin and his murderous thugs are not on. But that doesn't mean it's a simple question to work out what to do, what could be done, what should be done, what will be done, and what might be done. So we'll start, I think, today, if we can, and I don't know who's listening, I never know who's listening, but we'll start today with this question about the money, the Benjamins. We know there's going to be a complete asset freeze on all major Russian banks. We know that fresh legislation on Tuesday will prohibit all major Russian companies from raising finance on UK markets. Some more individuals and businesses are going to be sanctioned. We know that Russia's biggest defence company that supplies £10 billion worth of arms each year will be on that list, and some oligarchs close to the Kremlin will also be hit, including Kirill Shamalov, Russia's youngest billionaire, who was previously married to Putin's daughter. But And a former head of the security agency, the FSB, who mysteriously, I beg your pardon, the dad ran the FSB. His son miraculously ended up running a big Russian bank. Aeroflot is going to be suspended from landing in the UK, but there's nothing to stop Russians flying here on British Airways jets. or on, Lufthansa or whatever it may be. So we'll have a proper look at that. But I think the question, and if we can give ourselves credit for anything on this programme with regards to matters Russian over the last 10 years, it can be, stated with absolute confidence, we were way ahead of the curve on sanctions, on Sergei Magnitsky, on Bill Browder's work. Way, way, way ahead of the curve. I remember when I went to the very first Magnitsky Awards, I was lucky enough to receive one, actually. And it was a relatively small affair and a relatively fringe business. And then over the last few years, it has, one of the winners at the last award ceremony but won a Nobel Prize 6 months later. So, you get an idea of just how enormously, exponentially the call for sanctions against Russia has grown since Bill Browder launched that campaign, and others. John McCain, the former American politician, the late American politician, huge player on this field. They renamed a street in Kiev after John McCain because he was so on this going back 8 years. So I think this is the question to ask, and I apologise again because the way you vote doesn't determine the quality of your personality or your soul. And if you've ended up on the same team as the people that we're now going to talk about, you didn't do it knowing that they were up to this kind of thing. But unless they start sanctioning British citizens, unless they start sanctioning the Russian oligarchs who have inveigled their way into the very heart of British society, is any of this really going to matter? In terms of the messages that are sent, if you can still walk out of your Belgravia townhouse and hop into your chauffeur-driven Bentley to get driven to your tennis club, do these sanctions really do what they could do, what they should do? And is it as simple, do you think? Is it as simple as I'm portraying it? Looking at Brandon Lewis's defence of taking £25,000 from a businessman with Russian links and talking about all the other Conservatives who've done so, which is pretty much most of them. Their defence is, well, these people are British citizens. My question is, how the hell did they get British citizenship? To which the answer is they bought it. And the scheme only got shut down last week. So what are the chances, really, of getting these particular eggs out of this particular baked cake? And I'm speaking specifically about Russian oligarchs in London with British citizenship. There's 2,300 Russian kids in our public schools as we speak. They won't all be the children of dodgy characters. Some of them will be the children of exiled dissidents. Some of them might be the children of imprisoned authors. But 2,300 Russian children in the country's most expensive fee-paying schools. And I kind of wonder whether or not you can really achieve the effects we need to achieve while Vladimir Putin's mates are still running around Mayfair and Chelsea without much of a care in the world. I don't know. I'm interested in what you have to say.